The pack of papers is thick tonight. Football season is here. There are games on television tonight. There's beef between former players and schools, and we're going to talk about it all tonight on the Air Raid, Thursday, August 13th. This is our 10th show. We started this thing about a month ago, and it has done infinitely better than I ever thought that it might. And I've been very pleased with our viewership, our live viewership, people that go back and listen on podcasts, uh, all the subscribers, all the views. We're very appreciative, but we're going to keep this thing going. We want to make this thing as good as it possibly can be. We want to maximize the potential of the show, and of course, that does not happen without you guys. So thank you all very much. But we have a lot to talk about. Um, I have decided to take it upon myself to rank the head coaches in the SEC. I did it for the Big Ten, and it's only fair that I do it for the SEC as well. Could get pretty controversial, but we like to get controversial on this show. I'm also going to predict the records of each and every team in the SEC. That is a segment that we've been doing as prediction season continues in the month of August on the Air Raid. There is, like I was referring to, some beef. Jayden Daniels versus LSU. What is going on in Baton Rouge? It seems like we're just getting a lot of drama coming out of that part of the country. I will address that, and I will give you my full, honest, transparent thoughts on that. And then I have some fall camp intel for a certain team out west. That is also another segment that we've been doing on the show. So let me go ahead and start out by saying the last couple of shows we've gone about an hour. Tonight, however, we're going to go about 45 minutes. Going to try to keep it as brief as possible because, as you know, or as some of you might know, some of you are new around here. I also am a Tennessee Titans reporter alongside Connor Newt for our station here at 1025. They play a preseason game in Santa Clara at 8 o'clock, so I got to be seated for that. So we're gonna go quick on the show tonight. That's okay because we still have a lot of content to get to. So first thing that I ask, make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. Air Raid with Parker Kelley. If you think you're subscribed but not entirely sure, just go ahead and double check. It really helps out the show. Again, we want to make this thing as big as possible and maximize the potential of the show. We can't do that without you guys. All right, I'm getting into it. I'm just going to dive head first. I'm ranking the SEC head coaches. We're going top 10 because there are a lot of new head coaches in the SEC. I feel like that would be unfair because some of them have never coached a down in the SEC before, and we have a lot of newness in the SEC. Other guys are pretty proven, and we're going to go 1 through 10. We're just going to start off because there are no surprises at who tops this list. That is Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs. Number one, I don't think anybody is going to disagree on that. We're talking about a guy who already has 2 national championships, most of any coach in the SEC. He has 4 SEC championships, including the last 2 years. Do I need to go on? Kirby Smart is the best head coach in the SEC. Now, we couldn't go too long without getting controversial. Number 2 is going to turn a lot of heads, going to raise a lot of eyebrows, may even get some people down south of us pretty riled up. Number 2 on the list, top 10 SEC head coaches, Kalen DeBoer in Alabama. Now, a lot of you are like, well, why is Kalen DeBoer? A lot of you are probably shouting right now. That's okay. I'm gonna explain. As a head coach, coached at Sioux Falls, which is a NAIA school, coached at Fresno State, was previously at Washington before Alabama. His overall record as a head coach is among the best in the entire sport. 124-20 is his overall record as a head coach. Only 20 losses in his career as a head coach, and he's been coaching a while. Already has 120 plus wins. Many people forget because things have not matched what Nick Saban has done at Alabama. Many people forget that 2 years ago, Kalen DeBoer led his team to a national championship at Washington in 2023. Made the playoffs last year, won a game on the road in Norman, Oklahoma, got whooped by Indiana. Yes, I know about that. Here's what I'm really struggling to understand about people, because there is a lot of chatter, and that may be all that it is chatter about Alabama cutting ties with Kalen DeBoer. And I hear that, and I listen to it, and I'm like, okay, first of all, if you're going to cut ties with Kalen DeBoer, you better have a pretty good backup plan. So if you were to cut ties with Kalen DeBoer, who would you go out and get? I'm all ears. And also, too, Kalen DeBoer was just extended. Do you really want to pay that buyout? Is it worth paying the buyout, especially in this day and age of college football, when you need every last dollar you can to build a football team? Are you sure you want to spend a majority of that because you fired a coach? I don't know. So I have Kalen DeBoer as the number 2 head coach. Now, a lot of you are wondering, where is Steve Sarkisian? Why isn't Steve Sarkisian at number 2? Well, that's a good question, because Steve Sarkisian is number 3. And the reason I have Steve Sarkisian behind Kalen DeBoer is for one reason only, and that's because Kalen DeBoer, when he was at Washington in 2023, the team that they played and beat to get to the national championship was none other than the Texas Longhorns, who were coached by Steve Sarkisian. Steve Sarkisian is a great coach. He has assembled a fantastic roster in Austin. I believe them to be national championship contenders this year. But Kalen DeBoer, when he went head-to-head with Steve Sarkisian, he beat him, and he got to a national championship. But Steve Sarkisian, 89-50 overall as a head coach, made the playoffs in 2023, made the playoffs in 2024 in the first rendition of the 12-team playoff, made it to the semifinals, lost to Ohio State. He's done a great job. He's done a great job at Texas. I'll get to Texas a little bit later on in the show. At number 4, I have Lane Kiffin at LSU, 116-53 overall as a head coach in college. 3 straight 10-plus wins at Ole Miss, including a going 11-1 last year in the regular season, which I don't think had ever been done before. Now, I may be wrong on that, so I'll have to fact check it and correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. Offensive innovator, everything that he touches on offense turns to gold. The fact that they were just able to pluck Trinidad Chambliss from Ferris State last year, and he turns into one of the most dangerous players in college football, big part due to Lane Kiffin. Now, I know Ole Miss won't have Lane Kiffin this year, but I still expect Trinidad Chambliss to have a fantastic year. So I have Lane Kiffin at number 4. At number 5, I have Mike Elko of Texas A&M. Now, he doesn't have as much time on task as a head coach compared to some of these other guys, but he's had 2 stops. He was at Duke prior to Texas A&M, and now he's back in College Station. He did serve as defensive coordinator a while back at A&M, so he's back in College Station. Like I said, 35-16 overall as a head coach at Duke and at Texas A&M combined. Made the playoffs last season, went 11-1 in the regular season, hosted the playoff game, and honestly, Texas A&M had a good chance to win, a very low-scoring game, but they lost to Miami 10-3. So I never question Mike Elko's defensive prowess, what he's been able to do at Texas A&M on the defensive side of the ball, what he was able to do at Duke on the defensive side of the ball is very impressive. I believe he's going to thrive in College Station. That's what's really plagued Texas A&M over the last few years is you have all these high-profile recruiting classes come in, but it doesn't really matter if you don't have the right people to develop them. And I believe Mike Elko is one of the best at developing raw talent out of high school. The recruiting has not dropped off whatsoever at Texas A&M, and they have plenty of resources. So I believe Mike Elko is going to maximize that, and Texas A&M is a team to be reckoned with this year. So I have Mike Elko at number 5. At number 6, going to go local. Clark Lee at Vanderbilt. Nashville kid. He's been at Vandy since 2021, at least as a head coach, played at Vanderbilt back in the day. Things did not go well to start Clark Lea's tenure at Vanderbilt as a head coach. Lots of leeway given to him by the AD and the entire athletic department. But if we're being honest with ourselves, Vanderbilt as an institution has not always been the most committed to athletic success. It's always been more focused on the education, being a high profile institution, which it is, and the education is still very strong. But as of recent, having Candace Story-Lee as their athletic director, there has been a clear investment, not just into football at Vanderbilt, but it's been spread out among their athletic programs at the institution. In football, went 10-2 last year, was just on the outside looking in of the playoff. And if you're Clark Lea and you get that program to go 10-2, first time that program has ever got 10 wins in a regular season, if you're able to accomplish that and you're able to establish that type of culture at Vanderbilt, I mean, just think about it. 5 years ago, us talking about Vanderbilt having a chance at the college football playoff would have made a lot of people laugh. But Clark Lea envisioned it, and given the time, he's proven that he can accomplish something at Vanderbilt. So you're able to go 10-2 at Vanderbilt in the regular season, you deserve to be on this list and pretty high up there. At number 7, this is not going to go over well. A lot of controversy here. I told you on this list. I had Clark Lea ahead of another coach in state, and it's not that I think any less of this coach. It's just I really factor in getting 10 wins in the regular season at Vanderbilt. But Josh Heupel at Tennessee is at number 7 here. Overall record at UCF as a head coach and at Tennessee, he's 73-28. Fantastic win-loss record, winning percentage. 2 10-plus wins at Tennessee. Now, let's rewind the clock a little bit. You're Tennessee. You went from having Lane Kiffin for one season. Remember how that went down? Then you had Derek Dooley. You had Butch Jones. You had Jeremy Pruitt. I consider that the equivalent of, you go back to the Old Testament in the Bible, the Israelites going through the wilderness for 40 years. Now, it wasn't the wilderness for 40 years for Tennessee, but they were going through the wilderness for a while. Josh Heupel got Tennessee back to relevancy. In 22, that magical season did not end well for Hendon Hooker tearing the ACL, but in a way, it kind of did end well. 10-2 in the regular season, won the Orange Bowl, got to 11 wins, and then 2 years later, getting back to 10 wins and getting to the college football playoff. Josh Heupel has Tennessee back. If they're not in the national championship discussion, which this year they're not, or at least nobody expects them to be, but he has people talking about them. They're in the national picture, and people are talking about Tennessee. So Josh Heupel has done a fantastic job at Tennessee. I don't think he's on the hot seat this year. I think he's really got screwed over when it comes to the quarterback position just the last 2 years. I mean, who could have seen that Nico was going to abruptly exit in the fashion that he did? And then you're left with Joey Aguilar, and Josh Heupel, when it comes to quarterbacks, a wizard. Got the absolute most out of Joey Aguilar that was possible. Joey Aguilar really struggled with turnovers at Appalachian State, and I thought Josh Heupel did a fantastic job, considering he didn't have a lot of time with Joey Aguilar. And now you swing and miss in the portal during the winter. You don't get a portal quarterback, but you have 2 freshmen. One's a redshirt, one's a true, and George McIntyre and Faison Brandon. One of them is going to start this year. Neither of them have that much college experience, but that's just kind of how the cards were dealt for Tennessee. Now, it's unfortunate for Josh Heupel that it worked out that way, because I'm sure they'd like to have another experienced quarterback in there this year. But at the same time, I don't view Josh Heupel as on the hot seat this year whatsoever. I view this year as a bridge, and I know last year was a bridge too. But if you think about how Tennessee is set up in 2027, they'll have a 5-star quarterback in Faison Brandon. They'll have a 5-star left tackle in David Sanders. They'll have a 5-star receiver in Tristan Keys. They'll have a 5-star running back coming in from Baylor and David Gabriel Georges, who is the best running back in the high school class. And then if Mike Matthews is still there, that's another 5-star. So that's 5 5-stars all on Josh Heupel's offense. Give it time. Give it time. That's what I say to Tennessee fans who say that Josh Heupel's on the hot seat this year. At number 8, I have Eli Drinkwitz. An overall record of 58-30, very modest record between his time at App State and Missouri. Back-to-back 10-plus wins in 2023 and 2024. Had a Cotton Bowl victory in the 23 season over Ohio State. What I've always been impressed with about Eli Drinkwitz in Missouri, they've always been able to maximize the potential of the roster that they have. And Missouri's not this, blue blood in college football. They don't have the most talent-rich rosters compared to what an Ohio State might have, or compared to what an Oregon or a whomever, a Georgia might have. But they still have good players. But when it comes to developing guys, they're also pretty good too, and developing coaches. I think they're really good at that, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. I think they've done a great job there. So Eli Drinkwitz is number 8 on the list. At number 9, I have Brent Venables of Oklahoma. He's 32-20 overall as the head coach at Oklahoma. Great defensive mind. That's something that I'm not really ever going to question with Oklahoma as long as Brent Venables is there. They made the college football playoff last season, hosted that first-round game versus Alabama. But in alternating seasons, he's been Brent Venables in Oklahoma. They've been 6-7 that first year, then went 10-3, 6-7, back to 10-3. What are you going to do this year? I expect Oklahoma to be really good. I don't expect them to go 6-7, but I also didn't expect a lot of things last year. So we'll just have to see what they do this year. But I have Brent Venables at number 9, and then lastly, I could have put a number of coaches in here. I decided to go with the guy that's never coached in the SEC before, and that's John Sumrall at Florida. 43-12 in 4 seasons as a head coach at Troy and Tulane. He went 23-4 at Troy, 20-8 at Tulane. His worst season came in 2024. He was 9-5, and he got Tulane to the AAC Conference Championship game. He made it to the college football playoff last year with Tulane. That has to account for something. So I had John Sumrall of Florida at number 10. Just in case you missed this list, I'm going to put it back out later. I'm going to put it out on my socials. I'll have that posted tomorrow so you can see it. But yeah, that is my list of SEC head coaches. Only doing 10. But some more important matters at hand to get to. I'm going to predict every record of every team in the SEC for 2026. This could also get pretty spicy. And we're going to go in random order here. I'm going to start off with the Texas Longhorns. The Texas Longhorns have the 3rd toughest strength of schedule in the country. Now, if you're Rhett Lashley and you're the head coach at SMU, you're not too fond of preseason strength of schedule metrics because, and I get the sentiment. He basically says that we don't know what any team is going to be for 2026 because no games have been played. So how can you determine that this team has the 3rd toughest strength of schedule? It's basically just going off of how the team was last year. And I know a lot of things change from year to year. But for Texas, they have games versus Ohio State at home in week 2. They're at Tennessee in week 4. They have a bye week. Then they have Oklahoma, neutral site in Dallas. They have Florida, Ole Miss. They're at Missouri. They're at LSU, and they're at Texas A&M. That is a complete meat grinder of a schedule. However, I would like to remind those of you that are listening live and those of you that may be listening later on the podcast that schedules are not teams. And I like to use this example. Let's say the Super Bowl favorite this year, the Los Angeles Rams. If I were to take the Los Angeles Rams and demote them to college football, and I were to drop them, let's say I drop them in the Pac-12, the newly renovated Pac-12. The Los Angeles Rams would have a very easy strength of schedule compared to what Texas has to play this year. And Los Angeles, they're going to go undefeated most likely. But just because their strength of schedule is easy doesn't determine how good the team is, because at the end of the day, they're still the Los Angeles Rams. I think the same applies to Texas, because if Texas is as good as the roster is, at least on paper, then they should be fine despite the tough schedule. And I said at the beginning of the show that I think Texas is a national championship contender this year. I still believe that. So I have Texas going 10-2 this year, just because I believe the day and age of going undefeated, and when you expand to 9 conference games plus you play a Power 4 opponent in the non-con, I think the day and age of teams going undefeated in this league, very slim. Very, very slim. Not saying that it couldn't happen. It's just very slim. I have Texas going 10-2. Now, if they go 10-2, and let's say maybe that loss, one of those losses is to Ohio State, well, that still may be good enough to get you in the SEC championship game. And if you win the SEC, maybe you get a first-round bye in the college football playoff. Just saying. Moving on to the Georgia Bulldogs. This is viewed as tier 1 of the SEC. Georgia's schedule is obviously not as tough as Texas's is. I have them going 11-1 because I trust Kirby Smart. I trust Gunnar Stockton, their quarterback, his ability to perform in big games, regardless of how good you think he is at quarterback. He performed in big games last year. He performed against Florida, performed against Tennessee, performed against Alabama in the SEC championship, made some plays. So the floor of this roster is good enough for them to go 11-1. That's truly what I believe. Moving on to LSU and Lane Kiffin. I did my college football playoff predictions the other day, and I had LSU in the playoff. Now, just because the college football playoff has not adjusted their criteria, meaning they haven't adjusted their strength of schedule metrics, they don't heavily focus on that as much as they focus at what your actual record is. So I don't foresee a 9-3 team getting into the college football playoff. So that means there are no 9-3 teams. You have to be 10-2 or better. I do think LSU is going to be a playoff contender. I have them going 10-2. They have tough games, though. They have Clemson in week 1. They're at Ole Miss in week 3. The next week, they have Texas A&M. They're at Auburn. They have Alabama, Texas. Both of those games are at home, though. They're at Tennessee. That's a tough schedule. I still have them going 10-2. I really like the roster that they have in Baton Rouge. I'm going to talk about Baton Rouge a little bit later, by the way. Ole Miss. Also in my playoff predictions, at least the 1.0 version. We'll see about 2.0. I do not think Ole Miss is going to replicate what they did last year in the regular season. They went 11-1. I think that's hard to replicate. I do not think the roster is really all that worse. I think it's better. It might be slightly better. Trinidad Chambliss, I think he's the most dangerous player in college football. I don't think there's a better quarterback, running back duo in the country than Trinidad Chambliss and Kewan Lacey. I think their schedule's tougher than it was last year. You have LSU in there. You're at Florida. You're at Vanderbilt. You have Missouri. You're at Texas. You have Auburn, Georgia. You're at Oklahoma. I don't want to gloss over that Louisville game in week 1, neutral site in Nashville, which, by the way, I'll be there. So I'll have coverage from that. It's just one of those deals where, looking at the schedule, I think 10-2 is fair. And if you're 10-2, probably get in the playoff. Alabama. I think Alabama's missing the playoff this year. I do. The good news is they're going to be starting. Well, this isn't good news, but could be. I'm very high on both of these players, whoever's starting at quarterback for Alabama, between Austin Mack and Keelan Russell. I've been on the record of saying I think it's going to be Keelan Russell. Now, it may not be Keelan Russell week 1 to start, but eventually I think he'll take over as the starter. Maybe Austin Mack to start out. We'll see. Regardless of who's at quarterback. They're both talented, both very talented. Alabama could be 5-0 by the time they play Georgia in week week 6 on October 10th. They have East Carolina. They're at Kentucky, Florida State, South Carolina, at Mississippi State. With the talent roster edge that Alabama has in those games, they should be 5-0. They should be 5-0 by the time they play Georgia. Even if Alabama doesn't make the playoff this year, don't think Kalen DeBoer's getting fired, and I stand by that. I have Alabama going 9-3, and I have them missing the college football playoff. Let's go to the next team on the list. It is Texas A&M. I didn't have Texas A&M mentioned in my college football playoff. They went 11-1 in the regular season. It's just hard for me to see that happening again this year. There is some turnover on the offensive line. They have to replace four starters from last year's team, so 4 new starters on that offensive line. Marcel Reed, he played good towards the end of the regular season, but they have a new offensive coordinator. Colin Klein has taken the head coaching job at Kansas State, his alma mater. What does that look like? I trust the defense under Mike Elko, but I will say the run defense wasn't great last year. They gave up 130.8 yards rushing, which ranked 8th in the SEC and 40th nationally, so that's going to have to improve. I think a fair record for Texas A&M this year is 9-3. So I have them going 9-3, just on the outside looking in of the college football playoff. With Oklahoma, I also have Oklahoma missing the playoff. They're one of those teams, though, that I just wanted to find a way. I just wanted to find a way to get them into the college football playoff, but I was racking my brain trying to scratch out every win that I could for them on their schedule, even with a presumably healthy John Mateer, which a fully healthy John Mateer for a whole season, I see as a Heisman Trophy candidate. Again, I don't have any worries about the defense as long as Brent Venables is there, but they got to pair that with the run. They can't just be throwing the football. They have to be able to have some sort of run game. Am I guaranteed to get that? After last year, it was pretty bad. The run game was pretty non-existent. What does that look like? Just a question mark as right now. I have Oklahoma going 9-3 and also missing the playoff. But that could change. I'm releasing a college football playoff prediction 2.0. That'll be the final version pretty soon. What about the Florida Gators? What does a successful season look like in year 1 under John Sumrall? I would say bowl eligibility is certainly a good way to start. Now, you guys know, at least those of you that have been listening for a while, that I'm really high on this Florida team. Just because I'm high on them doesn't guarantee them wins on the field, as we know. But if you go through this roster, which I have several times, it is a top 25 roster in college football. It is a top 25 roster in college football. Plus, I have faith that John Sumrall is going to build a winner in Gainesville. He's built winners everywhere he goes. Now, I know that he's never coached in the SEC before, but if you're a good football coach, that should automatically translate. Plus, you'll have more resources to work with than you had at Tulane, than you had at Troy. Now, I have Florida going 6-6 this year. I have Florida going 6-6, getting to a bowl in year 1 under John Sumrall. I'd consider that a success. But the future of Florida, very high on as long as John Sumrall is there. So Florida may be better than 6-6, but that's just what I see. Tennessee, what are we expecting for Tennessee this year? We know the quarterback situation, either going to be George McIntyre or Faison Brandon. The starter has not been named. And knowing Josh Heupel, like I think I know Josh Heupel, I would expect him to get as close to week 1 versus Furman as possible before naming a starter. He may even go into that game playing both of them before declaring a starter. Now, I think you have to have your starter figured out by week 2 when you go to Georgia Tech. Tough schedule for Tennessee this year, right? You're at Georgia Tech in week 2. You have Texas in there. You have Auburn. Both of those games are in Neyland. You have Alabama. That game also in Neyland. I'm not going to just gloss over the fact that they have to travel to Columbia, South Carolina. Tennessee has struggled playing in Columbia, South Carolina, and especially if that game's at night, very hostile environment. You have to go to Texas A&M, you have LSU, and then you end the year at Vanderbilt. 8-4 is where I have Tennessee. I don't really have a lot of question marks on this roster outside of quarterback. I guess one of the other big question marks I have is how quickly is this defense able to get on the other side of the learning curve with Jim Knowles' defense? Because from a historical standpoint, it takes defenses about 2 years to get the Jim Knowles system fully implemented. But Jim Knowles brought over guys with him from Penn State to help expedite that curve. So I have Tennessee going 8-4. For Missouri, just talked about Eli Drinkwitz and how I think he's done a great job maximizing that roster. Ahmad Hardy is back at running back. He did have the situation happen in the offseason where he was shot in the leg, but I expect him to be a full go by the time the season gets here. He was the top 3 leading rusher in college football last year. Austin Simmons is going to be their quarterback, transfer from Ole Miss. Remember, Austin Simmons was good enough to win the starting job over Trinidad Chambliss last year, or at least Lane Kiffin thought so. But with how good Trinidad Chambliss did, you're not gonna bench a guy like that. So Austin Simmons transfers to Missouri, but the rest of the roster, is it on par with some of the upper echelon teams in the SEC? I don't know. I have Missouri going 7-5 in 2026, which would get them back to a bowl game. For Vanderbilt, how are they able to respond after the season that they had last year? We all know that they're going to have a new quarterback. Diego Pavia is gone. Jared Curtis is the guy that I think is going to start, although some are saying that there's a legitimate quarterback competition going on between him and Blaise Berlowitz. I just have this gut feeling you're paying Jared Curtis all this money. You're not gonna sit him. So I think Jared Curtis is going to win the job. I think Vanderbilt has one of the best 1-2 punches at running back, not just in the SEC, but in the country, with Cedric Alexander and MK Young, and I don't know why they don't get talked about more. They have to replace 4 starters on the offensive line, but I trust their evaluation. Bart Simmons and the crew. Clark Lee has talked about the overall depth of this team, how it feels like it's better than last year. Ricardo Jones is a name that you're going to want to familiarize yourself with. He's a safety transfer from Clemson, had 6 interceptions last year, which was tied for second in the country. So I feel good about this overall roster. But if it's Jared Curtis, there's going to be a learning curve. There is. It's just part of college football. It just happens. So Vanderbilt, I have them going 7-5. I have them going 7-5. I think that's fair if you have a true freshman starting at quarterback. For Auburn, I got to go quick here. I have Auburn going 6-6. Bowl eligibility in year 1 for Alex Golesh would be a success. There is a world out there in which Auburn starts the season 5-0. They have Baylor, Southern Miss, Florida, Vanderbilt. 3 of those games are at home, but for some reason they're playing the Baylor game in Atlanta because it's news to me that neither of these teams have game on actual home campuses. You know how I feel about neutral site games. And then they're at Tennessee. So there is a world, although unlikely, that Auburn is 5-0 by the time they play at Georgia between the hedges. Let's move on. We got to move quick. Got some more things to get to. Kentucky. I've been high on Will Stein, and I'm going to continue to be high on Will Stein. Just maybe not this year. I have Kentucky going 5-7, just missing a bowl game. But as long as Will Stein's there, I feel good about the future of Kentucky. Very good recruiter. Brought in a highly ranked transfer portal class. Kentucky may be better than 5-7, for all I know. South Carolina. I have South Carolina returning to a bowl game. They go 6-6. I just have a lot of question marks on this roster outside of Lenore Sellers. Is he going to have to put on the cape? And if so, how much is he going to have to put on the cape? They have Nick Harbor at receiver, a freak, an alien out there catching passes for Lenore Sellers. And then on the other side, the line of scrimmage on the defensive line, they have Dylan Stewart, who is a projected top 5 pick in next year's NFL draft. But outside of that, I just don't know. I'm not sure about the overall roster. But they have a new offensive coordinator by the name of Kendall Briles, who was at TCU last year. I like that pairing with Lenore Sellers, but how much is Lenore Sellers going to have to kind of shoulder that load? That's a question that I have. Moving on, we're getting to the bottom of the SEC here. Mississippi State. If you're Brandon Walker and you're listening to the show, I'm just going to ask that you cover your ears right here. Brandon Walker has been on the record of saying that he thinks Mississippi State is going to go 8-4 this year. To which I respond, drugs. That's evidence of drug use. But again, Brandon Walker, cover your ears. I have Mississippi State going 5-7 this year. That's what they went in 2025. Very high on Jeff Lebby. Love Jeff Lebby. I'm openly rooting for Jeff Lebby. I just do not see it this year. I just don't. I think Jeff Levy's done a fine job. They could impress depending on how good their quarterback play is with Kamaro Taylor. I could easily see him get into a bowl game. I just think it's going to be 5-7. Again, there's a world they might be able to start 4-0. They're at Southern Miss, or excuse me, they have Louisiana Monroe. They're at Minnesota in week 2, which is a very interesting matchup that I have circled. They're at South Carolina, and they have Missouri. Long shot that they're 4-0 by the time they welcome in Alabama to town, but it's out there. I'm just going to toss that around. And then Arkansas. I like Ryan Silverfield. I just don't know what to make of the hire because there's so much behind the scenes that has to be aligned for Arkansas. They went 2-10 last year. It's hard for them to be much worse than that. I have them being slightly better, 3-9. I just don't know what to make. I just know there's a lot of work to be done at Arkansas. So I have them going 3-9 this year. Those are my SEC record predictions. Again, I can put that out on social media as well for those of you that might have missed live. Okay, so I did want to get to – this brings me no joy to talk about, truly. What did I see with Jayden Daniels and LSU? Just pure craziness this morning when I saw the news when I woke up, coming out of Baton Rouge. Let me set the scene. Let me tell you what happened for those of you that don't entirely know the deal between Jayden Daniels and LSU. So an attorney representing Washington Commanders quarterback Jayden Daniels informed LSU that the school can no longer use his name, image, and likeness according to an August 5th cease and desist letter sent to Tigers athletic director Verge Osbury. This is via ESPN's Mark Schlabach. It gets even worse. There's a new wrinkle to this. Sources confirmed that Jayden Daniels' camp wants LSU to return its copy of the Heisman Trophy, something LSU has no intention of doing, nor should they. They should not give Jayden Daniels a return of the copy of the Heisman Trophy. Where is this stemming from, you might be asking yourself? Well, Jayden Daniels, in the article that I read today, and his family, they said that they feel, quote, profoundly disrespected, end quote. I told you that I'm going to give you my full, honest opinion on this. I think his mom is in his ear. I really think his mom is in his ear. I watched Quarterback on Netflix, in which Jayden Daniels was featured. Jayden Daniels' mom, for those of you that don't know, is his agent in the NFL. And if you watch that series, you see how mellow Jayden Daniels comes across. You see how chill of a guy he is. Really doesn't talk all that much. Comes across as an introvert, kind of. But I could see his mom being in his ear saying, like, hey, you see that corner for LSU, DJ Pickett, who, by the way, is going to be wearing number 5 for them this fall. You see how LSU is allowing him to wear your number 5 jersey, which, by the way, has not been worn since Jayden Daniels' last game at LSU. There is a business aspect to all of this. I understand. But he's not being disrespected or anything. He's not. You don't have to have your jersey retired. You don't have to not have anybody else wear the number 5 jersey for you to get the respect that you deserve. Jayden Daniels accomplished great things at LSU, won a Heisman Trophy, set some school records. I don't know how much of this is a comparison to Joe Burrow because no one has worn the number 9 in a game since Joe Burrow's last game in 2019. But at the same time, and I know this because I talked to LSU people today, I talked to LSU fans today. If we're comparing Jayden Daniels to Joe Burrow, guys, they're not even on the same rung. And this is no disrespect to Jayden Daniels because Jayden Daniels was great. The offense that he led during his 2 seasons at LSU was national championship good. The problem is they didn't have a defense to supplement how good the offense was. Joe Burrow, that year in 2019, that may have been the greatest college football team we've ever seen. That may have been the greatest single season by a quarterback that we've ever seen. And LSU people have told me that they have all the respect in the world for Jayden Daniels. They appreciate everything that Jayden Daniels did for them. They love Jayden Daniels. But when it comes to mentioning him and Joe Burrow in the same sentence, Joe Burrow is on rung 1 and Jayden Daniels is right below him. That's no slight to Jayden Daniels, I promise, because I love Jayden Daniels. I love watching Jayden Daniels play. But let's not pretend like they are in the same conversation because that's just not the case. Joe Burrow doesn't have his jersey retired. Now, it may get retired at some point, but it's not retired. So it's not like Joe Burrow has his number retired. What I can't understand is why this is a hill that you feel like you want to die on. Why do you feel like doing this? Almost comes across as petty. One thing that I know about the LSU fan base, the great fan base of Louisiana State University, if you accept Louisiana, if you buy into what the state of Louisiana is offering, they will accept you and they will love you. But if you offend them, and this has rubbed a lot of people the wrong way down in Louisiana, if you offend them, they're quick to turn on you. So I'm not sure if this is a fan base that I'd want to piss off. I'm just being honest. I don't understand why you feel the need to do this. I don't understand why, even if this is business at the end of the day, why you'd want to burn this bridge. I do not understand that. That's my full unfiltered opinion on this. I do think his mom is in his ear. I really do. I do not think this decision is entirely Jayden Daniels, but you also, as a man, as a professional athlete, you have the final say in this. So if your mom is asking you to send this cease and desist letter to not allow LSU to use your name, image, and likeness, you could step in and be like, I don't want to take it that far. Yeah, I may be mad about the situation, but I don't want to take it that far. He could have done that, but he didn't. And now it appears that LSU has 180 days to fully stop using Jayden Daniels' name, image, and likeness. Really unfortunate situation. I hate to see this. I hate to see him acting this way towards LSU, and it's just a shame. It really is a shame. One final thing before we get out of here. I have some fall camp intel. That's a new segment that we've introduced to the show in the month of August. And we're going to go out west. We're going to go to USC. For those of you that listened to my playoff predictions the other day, you know that I had USC as the 11th seed. And in that scenario, they would be traveling to Georgia to take on the Bulldogs between the hedges. Fall camp intel for USC. The truth of the matter is it's playoff or bust for Lincoln Riley. He's had ample time to fix the mistakes that he made hiring on the defensive side of the ball. The defense has just done this over the last 2 years in a good way. Positive trend. You bring in Gary Patterson, who's last time we saw him was the head coach at TCU. Great defensive mind. We'll see if it pays dividends for USC this fall. I personally think it will because I had them in the playoff. It's year 3 for Jayden Daniels, which we all know that Lincoln Riley has never had a problem developing quarterbacks. And if it's year 3 for you in the system, you should have a pretty good year. The run game with King Miller and Wayman Jordan really impressed me last year. Both of them were walk-ons to start their USC career, and both of them were fantastic for them. They have all 5 returners on the offensive line, all 5 across the board. They're all returning for 2026. The line of scrimmage looks like it's going to be a plus for them, not just on offense, but on defense as well. It's looking like a Big Ten line of scrimmage, which is great. That's exactly what you want to hear. Some names that you need to know. USC had the number 1 recruiting class in high school in 2026. And they're going to have to rely on a lot of that true freshman talent this year. Luke Waffle, he's a projected starter at edge as a true freshman. That's a name that you're going to want to know. Alex Graham and Elbert Hill, they're going to be starting in the secondary at corner for USC. They have a wide receiver by the name of Trent Mosley, who's a projected starter as a freshman, and then tight end Mark Bowman. I promise you're going to want to know that name. He's going to be instrumental in the aerial attack for USC. All of those guys are true freshmen. All of them are projected starters. So they're going to have to rely on these guys to not only did they make up the number 1 recruiting class, but now they have to come in right away and produce in the Big Ten. The wide receiver room, it did take a hit last year. You lose Mekhi Lemon to the NFL draft. He was the Biletnikoff Award winner last year. You lose Jacoby Lane, which are 2 big losses, but there is a receiver by the name of Tanuk Hines, who is a sophomore. He sat behind both of those guys last year, and he's going to be wide receiver 1. He's going to assume the role of wide receiver 1 this year. I expect big things from him. USC has a great roster overall, but they are going to have to rely on true freshmen. But I do think those true freshmen will produce. I think they make the playoffs this year again because I don't think they have any choice. I haven't sold my stock on Lincoln Riley, so if he wants to keep his job, he better make the playoffs this year. They get Oregon, Washington, and Ohio State this year at home, which that's a gauntlet, but at least they get them at home. But then they have to go to Indiana late November, and then they have to travel cross country to go to Penn State on October 10th, which I expect to be the whiteout game. I think USC, in order to make the playoff, has to get 3 of those games. They have to win 3 of those games. They can afford to lose 2 of them and still make the playoff, and I think they win the rest of their games on their schedule. Tough schedule, really tough schedule for USC in the Big Ten this year, but I think they get it done ultimately at the end of the day, and I have them making the playoffs. I told you a little bit of a shortened show today because we got to sit down at 8 o'clock to watch the Titans. That is one of the other responsibilities I have with this station, so my butt will be seated at 8 o'clock as the Titans take on the 49ers. But I appreciate all of you that were listening live. And continue to subscribe, continue to like the show. If you're watching or you go back and you watch later, subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast, whichever one that you prefer, preferably both, if I'm asking nicely. And if you think that you're subscribed but not entirely sure, just go ahead and double check. Again, it really, really helps the show out. And we want to, the reason we're doing this show is because of you guys. Like, we want to just kick our feet up, lean back a little bit, talk some college football, because what else would we rather do? Spend time with friends and family? That was a joke. I love my friends and family. We want to talk college football. So make sure that you're subscribed, and we have games right around the corner. And in the meantime, we'll have another show for you next week, Tuesday. Next week is our final week of doing 2 shows per week. After that, we're going to ramp it up to 3, and that won't really slow down until the month of February. So make sure that you're in tune. You're locked in with us. Have a great weekend. Enjoy some of the preseason football if you choose to partake in that. In the meantime, take care. God bless. We'll talk again next week.